Well, hello and welcome to HCTV episode 1. Stacy Murphy here. And HCTV was born, it's Harvest Community TV was born because there are so many people who are getting into growing food today, and there's a lot of mistakes that beginning growers make. So I wanted to go through 10 mistakes that beginning growers make and how to avoid them. And we're going to be going through each episode one by one. So today we're going to cover the first mistake that most beginners make when they start to garden, specifically when they start to grow vegetables and herbs, because that's what we do here in the Harvest community. Now, here's the question for you. What do elephants, first dates, and gardening have in common? Well, it's all about this first mistake that beginning gardeners make. So check it out. So here's the deal. Most people, when they decide, I'm going to grow some food, what happens is the first thing that happens is they say, how do I grow food? That's the first question that comes to their mind. And I get it. That's the word that most people use when we talk about gardening. It's how do I grow food? So that's the first mistake that people make. And here's why. The real question to be asking yourself about growing food, and this is a whole mindset shift, the first question to actually ask yourself is not, how do I grow food? That's a mistake to ask that question because that puts you in a doing mode. The question you want to ask yourself is, how do I connect to the earth's power so that the earth grows food? Because the earth is really the one doing the growing. And what you're doing is you're actually connecting to that power and you're supporting it. All right. So the number one mistake that people make is they say, how do I grow food? Stacy, how do I grow food? And then what they do is they go about doing all the things. They go out to the store and they get the garden boxes and the containers and the soil and the potting mix and the seeds and the seedlings and all of the stuff that they need in order to, they think, to grow food, all the things that will put them in a position to grow food. But here's the deal. It's not something that you can understand all at once. If you're brand new to gardening, you know this. It takes time to get to know your plants. So what you're actually doing is you're not asking, how do I grow food? That's not the first question that you ask when you want to garden, when you want to grow vegetables and herbs. That's a mistake. The first question you want to ask yourself is actually, how do I get to know the plants? And this is where I want to talk about the elephant. So my question that I asked was, what do elephants, first dates, and gardening have in common? Well, typically what people do when they want to grow food is the first thing that they say, how do I do all of it? How do I understand all of this all at once? And what that's like is basically eating the elephant all at once. If you've ever heard this terminology, how do you eat an elephant? And I don't eat elephants, I'm actually vegan. But if you were to try to answer that question, how do you eat an elephant? It would be one bite at a time. But most people, when they want to grow food, they want to know everything all at once. They want to try everything all at once. They want to do everything all at once. And my advice to you is to take a step back and instead of ask, how do I grow food? Ask yourself, how do I get to know my plants? And I'm going to give you some ideas for just how to do that in a second. So I'll just show you a couple of examples here. So if you wanted to grow food, you might need to know a little bit more about your plants and what they need. For instance, let's say you wanted to go out on a date with somebody. You probably want to ask them, what do they like? What do they want to do? What do they like doing with their time? And so oftentimes when we decide that we're going to garden for the first time and we go out there and we say, okay, I want to grow some food, we don't take any time to actually get to know the plants and what they want. So, how many people could identify what kind of plant this is? That's a little baby plant. That plant is about 4 weeks old. First of all, did you know it's 4 weeks old? So you got to get to know your plants. And most people looking at that plant, they might know what family that plant is in. They might know that that's in the carrot family. They might even know that that's a little baby cilantro plant. But how do you know that when you're first getting started? So when you're first getting started growing food, I want you to get to know your plants. And I'm going to tell you how to do that in just a second. So getting to know your plants, that's what this is all about. Because if you were to say, Stacy, how do I grow food? And I got to be the one who does it all. I got to go out. I got to buy the boxes. I got to buy the soil. I got to buy the compost. I got to buy the seeds. I got to set it all up. I got to set up the watering. There's all these things that you have to do in order to grow the food. But here's the deal. When you know what the plants want, all that stuff becomes so much easier when you know what they want. So what I would recommend doing is getting to know the plants. The first thing I would do if I was growing food and I was getting to know my plants, because that's what I'm telling you to do here, is get to know your plants. What I would recommend that you do is, let's say you want to grow cilantro. So these are little baby cilantro plants right here, little baby cilantro plants. So what I would recommend doing is going online, and you have an amazing resource. You have Google, which has images. So what I would do is I would Google cilantro seeds, take a look at what they look like as seeds. Then I would Google cilantro seeds sprouting, see what they look like when they sprout. I would start Googling cilantro seeds 1 week, cilantro seeds 2 weeks, cilantro seeds 3 weeks. Get to know, what is my plant going to look like each and every week, so I know if my plant looks normal or not. And this is the number one thing that I get asked all the time, like, Stacy, take a look at this plant. Does this look normal? And what's wrong with my plant? So if you have a history of knowing what's normal and what's not, then you have a better chance at growing food, all right? Which is your goal. You're asking me, how do you grow food, right? So my recommendation is to go to Google. Now I'm going to tell you the downside of going to Google for this in just a second, but what I would recommend, you're going to get to know your plants. So one by one, look at the different plants that you want to grow. Let's say cilantro, mustard greens. I've got, what else do I have? So I have little baby mustard greens here, little baby mustard greens. This is a little baby tomato plant right there. So for those of you watching, how do you know what your baby plants look like when they look healthy? How do you know what they look like when they're older? So behind me, I'm going to move just a hair, see if you can see this guy here, this guy right here. So that's a celery plant that is not going to produce any celery. And I know that because I know what a celery plant that produces celery looks like. And so if you're a brand new gardener, what I would recommend doing is you get to know your plants. The first question that you ask is not, how do I grow food? The first question is, how do I know my plants? So you go to Google, you search for celery, 1 week old, celery plants, 2 weeks old, celery plant, three weeks old. Track the plant through its history. You might not find an image for everything. Here's the downfall to Google, because there is a downfall to Google. You're getting to know your plants. The downfall to Google is that you start searching celery 4 weeks old, celery 6 weeks old, celery 8 weeks old. There's going to be some photos of people posting their images and their plants are not doing well. So you have to know the difference between an image where somebody's posting it saying, this is what my plant looks like, is this normal? And a picture of a typical plant. So there's a lot of really great resources online. If you find images that are on any kind of extension agency website, you probably know that that's a regular looking plant. If the photo has anything in the description of the image saying, new gardener, what's wrong with my plant, what's eating my plant, don't look at those photos. But if you find some photos which say 4 weeks old tomato plant, 8 weeks old tomato plant, so you can see what you have to look forward to. So I talked about a little bit, the question that I posed here is, the mistake that beginning growers make is they say, how do I grow food? And I'm saying, instead of asking that, ask, how do I get to know my plants? And you do that through date nights. The same way that you get to know humans, that you get to have relationships with humans, is you go out on a date. And, you know, when you're getting to know somebody, do you marry them right away? No. Well, maybe. If you're on Married at First Sight, you do. But most people, they go out on a couple dates, right? And they get to know somebody. So my recommendation is, every week, take a couple minutes out of your schedule and basically get to know your plants. So what plants are you growing? And do a little bit of research into images about those particular plants. Call it a date night. I'm going on a date night with my garden. I'm getting to know, I'm going on a date night with my celery. I'm going on a date night with my tomato plants. And then as you start to grow the plants, actually as they start to, as they start to seed and grow in your presence, then you can have a real date night with them, and you can show up and you can look at them and you can water them and you can ask them, what do they need to thrive? Start talking to them like they can talk back, because they can. So the reason why I'm hosting these Harvest Community television episodes, and we're doing 10 episodes in 10 weeks. We're airing here every week at 4 p.m. Pacific on Tuesday. The reason I'm doing this is that there are so many new gardeners out there, and I know that because we are getting inundated with questions. And what happens in the questions that I've been receiving is that everybody wants to know everything all at once. And here's the deal. You can't eat an elephant all at once. You just can't. Not many people are eating elephants. I get it. It's just a saying. If you're unfamiliar with the saying, how do you eat a field of kale? Well, you only eat it one plant at a time. And so the same way with your garden, I want you to think about your garden as if you're having date nights with your garden, date nights with your plants. Get to know your plants. How do you get to know your plants? Well, when they're right in front of you, you can actually spend some time with them, looking at them, identifying, okay, the leaves are turning a little bit yellow on that particular leaf. What does that mean? But the other way that I highly recommend is before your plants are even growing, before you go out and get containers, before you go out and get lumber, before you go out and pick plants, because guess what? You might just pick the wrong plants. Before you do all that doing energy, get to know your plants. And so go online, spend a date night, and look at photos of what does it look like for a 1-week-old arugula plant, a 2-week-old arugula plant, a 3-week-old arugula plant. What does it look like when the arugula plant no longer produces? So you know what that looks like ahead of time. Get to know your plants. And that is one thing that Google is very good at, is lots of images. But again, the thing it's not good at is you have to be able to identify if a picture is from somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. And that's up there too. But the more that you can get to know your plants and spend some time with them, the easier this is gonna get, a little bit at a time. So I recommend that your garden is more like a habit and less like an outcome. So if you told me that you wanted to grow food, which you do, that's probably your number one question is, how do I grow food, Stacy? And my answer is a little bit at a time. A little bit at a time. And that means getting to know your plants a little bit at a time. And I'll tell you what, I've taught hundreds of thousands of people how to grow food. And here's what happens for every new gardener that I've ever met. They start the season so excited. And they start doing. And then they don't know what they're doing, and they keep trying to do things, but they've run out of things to do because there's not actually a whole lot that you actually have to do. You let the plants grow. The plants are the ones. You're tapping into the energy of the earth for the plants to grow. You're not actually doing a whole lot. But what most beginners do is they say, how do I do this? And then they start doing way too much. And then they fizzle out on their excitement because nothing's happening. They run out of things to do. And so my message to you is what to do is to get to know your plants, to date your plants, to go online, look at photos of what your future plants are going to look like so you know what they're going to look like when they get there and you can measure whether they're normal or not. And then when they do start emerging, spend a little date night with them. Cuddle up with your plants for a little bit of time and just look at them. Just look at them and notice what's going on with them. Journal, journaling about what they're up to, what they look like, taking photos so that the next year you know what's normal and what's not. And I'll tell you from experience, this is what happens with all the growers that I help. That first year, everything seems to be coming at them 1,000,000 miles an hour, and they're like doing, trying all these things. They don't know if they're doing anything right. That's exactly what it's going to feel like your first year. It's all okay. It's perfect. Let it unfold that way. Enjoy the ride. It's a lot of fun. Enjoy the plants growing. That's the best part of all of this. And what's going to happen is that by the end of the season, you're going to say, oh, I get what she said. I get how this all fits together. And your second year, you're going to say, I'm ready. I'm ready. I see how this all fits together. So just be aware that that first year, it's like you're dating everything. And think about when you grew up and when you were first dating, did you know how to date? Did you know how to go out on a first date? Probably not. You probably had to work at it. You probably had to figure out how to communicate. And this is you communicating with your plants. And I'll tell you what, your second year, if you've been gardening for a little while, your second year, what's going to happen is you're going to be learning new things. So this never ends. You still get to know your plants every year, and you get to dive a little bit deeper. And every year you have a deeper relationship, not just with your plants, but you have a deeper relationship with your place on this earth. You have a deeper relationship with your connection to where your food comes from. You have a deeper connection to your health and your vitality, and you understand that your vitality is directly related to your excitement about these plants, your relationship with these plants. You say a little prayer of gratitude, of thanks for your plants, and you instantaneously feel your health and your vitality boosting, and you know exactly what you need to do in your garden for healthier plants. So this is our first episode here of Harvest Community TV. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know if this resonates with you. What do elephants, first dates, and gardening have in common? And just to recap, you can't eat an elephant all at once. You've got to eat it bite by bite. In the same way in a garden, you've got to let it unfold step by step. This is like a dating process with your plants, getting to know them a little bit at a time. It's so rewarding. I've been gardening for years, and my relationship to plants every year is deeper. And every year I feel more and more connected with the earth and with the health of the entire planet, with my community and with my family. And that is because I have cultivated these relationships with these plants, and I know exactly what's going on with them. I know exactly what's going on for these little baby plants. And that's what I would love for you too. So let me know how this is going for you. Harvest Community TV episode 1 here today, and next week, same time, same place, we're gonna do episode 2, and it's called There's Nothing. What's it called? It's called There's Nothing Out Here That's Out to Get You. That's the cliffhanger for episode 2 coming your way next week. All right, take care, everybody.